Thanksgiving, people in Braylorne talked about a man in black who watched the children. My grandfather grew up there, a small mining town near the Canada border that doesn't exist anymore. And before he died, he told me a story I still wish I'd never heard. Even now, every Thanksgiving, I hear laughter, then screaming in my sleep. It started in the late 1920s. Every year during Thanksgiving week, the same tall figure appeared near the festival grounds. He wore a long black coat and stood perfectly still watching the kids play. The strange thing was that nobody really feared him because everyone believed they knew him. They said it was Jonas Vermeer, the town carpenter, a quiet, kind man who fixed broken toys, repaired roofs for free, and helped nearly every family in Braylorne. Kids loved him. Parents trusted him. No one questioned his presence. But every Thanksgiving, without fail, a child went missing, and the next morning, they would be found hanging from the same oak tree near the woods. No bruises, no struggle, nothing disturbing except the fact they were simply gone, placed, like someone gently put them there. The town blamed outsiders, blamed wolves, blamed the cold, everything except Jonas. But the truth they didn't want to face was that Jonas had changed. 2 years earlier, his own son, Willem, had disappeared during the festival. Willem was found the next morning hanging from the same oak tree. Jonas never recovered. He stopped talking, stopped smiling, stopped being Jonas. He wandered the woods at night, staring into nothing, mumbling to shadows. Everyone thought grief hollowed him out. They didn't know something else had taken his place. On Thanksgiving night in 1935, a few men decided to follow him, not because they suspected him, no one suspected Jonas, but because they worried he might hurt himself wandering alone. They watched him quietly slip into the forest and followed him deep into a valley none of them knew existed. There, hidden behind overgrown trees, was an old farmhouse that wasn't on any map. Jonas entered. When they peeked inside, they saw a long wooden table stained with old dried blood. Strange symbols were carved into the grain. Strips of pale skin, small enough to belong to a child, hung like ribbons. And in the center sat an old photograph of a boy, Jonas's son, Willem. On the back, one word was written: Verloren, lost. Before they could process what they were seeing, Jonas appeared behind them, but it wasn't Jonas anymore. His eyes were black, completely black. His voice was deeper than any human voice, speaking a language that made one man faint instantly and another collapse to his knees. The others ran, and something followed them. 3 days later, Braylorne was gone. Official records say a sudden earthquake destroyed the entire town. But my grandfather swore the ground never shook. The earth didn't collapse, it opened, like something underneath pulled the entire town downward. Only the people who had left early for work survived. My grandfather was one of them. For years, I didn't believe a word of it. Until last year. I visited the patch of land where Braylorne used to be. Nothing was left, no houses, no foundations, not even rubble. Just dead soil and crooked trees. But the moment I stepped into the woods, I heard children laughing. Then a scream, then whispering in that same guttural language my grandfather described. When I turned, I saw a figure standing between the trees, the same black coat, the same empty stare, the same stillness, watching me. I ran until my lungs burned. A week later, something arrived outside my apartment door. A plain envelope. Inside was the same photograph from the farmhouse, the boy, Willem. But something was different. The back still said Verloren, only now another word had been scratched underneath it. En gefunden, lost and found. When I flipped the photo again, the boy wasn't looking at the camera anymore. He was looking straight at me and smiling. For the past few nights, I've heard footsteps outside my apartment, but not walking, just standing still, like someone is watching, waiting. Thanksgiving is getting closer, and I don't think Jonas is the only one wearing a body anymore. My roommate told me this happened to her during Thanksgiving week in 2022, when she and her daughters were invited to her daughter's boyfriend's family home in Connecticut. They arrived late at night, around 11:30 p.m., and since the house was already packed with relatives, the only place left for them to sleep was the basement. It felt a little colder than the rest of the house, but nothing unusual, or so she thought. She woke up early the next morning, around 7 a.m., while everyone else was still asleep. The house was silent, that kind of early morning quiet where you notice every tiny sound. She made herself a cup of coffee and sat in the kitchen, enjoying the calm before the day started. That's when she heard soft footsteps coming down the stairs. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8, came down in pajamas. He didn't look strange or ghostly at all, just a sleepy kid rubbing his eyes. He walked past her, opened the fridge, grabbed a juice box, and headed back upstairs. She even smiled at him, thinking how adorable he was. She didn't question it, though later she admitted something about how quietly he moved felt strange, but she brushed it off. Hours later, once everyone was awake and preparing the meal, the house felt warm, loud, and full. At one point, she casually said, "By the way, where's the cute little boy I saw this morning?" The moment those words left her mouth, the boyfriend's grandmother pulled her aside immediately, like she needed to hide the conversation. Her voice dropped. "Please don't say that around my daughter," she whispered. "Her son died in front of the house. A car accident. He was just a little boy, and sometimes I still see him too." My roommate said she felt her whole body go cold. She hadn't even thought she might be describing him. Suddenly that quiet morning didn't feel so harmless anymore. She kept replaying the image of the boy walking upstairs, the way he didn't make a sound, the way she didn't hear any bedroom door close afterward. That night, close to midnight, her daughter and her boyfriend went upstairs to grab some yogurt from the fridge. She remembered clearly choosing a strawberry yogurt and putting the banana yogurt back. They joked about how she hated the banana flavor, but when they came back downstairs to the basement, the banana yogurt was sitting on their bed, placed neatly, not dropped or tossed, just waiting. There were no little kids in the house, no one else awake, and no one had any reason to touch anything in the basement. My roommate said that moment hit her harder than seeing the boy, because it meant something had come downstairs, something that moved quietly, just like that morning. They barely slept that night. The next morning, they packed up early and left. She told me she doesn't think the family home is evil or anything, but she's sure of one thing. Whatever she saw that morning wasn't a dream, wasn't her imagination, and it definitely wasn't alive.
Thanksgiving is supposed to be a day of gratitude, a tradition in the U.S. in 1789. Most people walk away with happy memories, but the story I'm about to tell is nothing like that. This might be the creepiest Thanksgiving experience you've ever heard, so sit back, relax, and listen closely. I've been best friends with my buddy Richard for as long as I can remember. Every year, I'd go to his house for Thanksgiving, and he'd come to mine for Christmas. Our routine was always the same: a quick game of flag football with his cousins, helping in the kitchen, then settling in to watch the NFL games. That year started off just as normal, but something felt a little off in his house. I couldn't explain it, just a strange heaviness in the air, especially when we went down to the basement for the first time that morning. I brushed it off. When dinner was finally ready, there were around 15 people, so everyone split into different rooms. Me and Richard took our plates to the basement, along with 2 of his cousins. The basement was big and dimly lit. We sat near the window, and his cousin sat on the other side, near the stairs. Behind the stairs was a small closet where Richard kept laundry stuff, detergents, towels, fabric softener. We were mid-conversation when we heard it, a soft scratching on the closet door, slow, steady, almost like fingernails dragging along wood. At first, we shrugged it off, thinking it might be some animal from the field behind the house. Richard opened the closet. Nothing. Completely empty. His cousins went upstairs a few minutes later, and that's when everything escalated. A piercing scream came from upstairs. Me and Richard bolted up the stairs. When we reached the living room, everyone was outside, staring at the neighbor's house. It was completely engulfed in flames. No one knew how it started. We ran back downstairs to grab our phones, but the moment we reached the basement, the lights went out, and the scratching started again, louder, closer. Richard ran to the closet, but this time the door wouldn't open. It was jammed shut, even though the door had no lock on it at all. Then we heard a voice, a woman's voice, whispering from the top of the stairs. "Please leave. Please leave. Please leave." The voice kept repeating, calm but desperate. The stairway was empty, but the voice stayed right there, as if someone was standing inches away. We panicked and ran toward the stairs, but when I reached the top, the door slammed shut by itself. A rotten smell hit us instantly. I grabbed the door handle to pull it open and burned my hand. The metal was scorching hot, like it had been heated from the inside. Richard tried calling his family, but no one answered. Everyone was outside dealing with the fire, completely unaware of what was happening to us. Out of nowhere, something told me to turn around. When I did, I saw Richard floating, his feet inches off the ground, his eyes pitch black. I froze. The only thing I could think to do was to pray. I grabbed the cross necklace my grandmother gave me when I was 11 and held it as tight as I could. I shut my eyes and prayed non-stop, maybe for 2 minutes, maybe longer. When I opened my eyes, Richard was slowly being lowered to the ground. But then I saw her. A woman in a black dress stepped out of his body, not a shadow or a trick of the light, a solid figure, pale and emotionless. She walked across the basement and moved up the stairs, passing straight through the door that burned my hand. The moment she disappeared, Richard collapsed. He hit his head and was out for almost a minute. When he woke up, he remembered nothing. To this day, the last thing he recalls is seeing the neighbor's house on fire. He has no memory of the basement, the whispering, the burning door, or the possession. Their family hasn't experienced anything that extreme since, but one thing has never stopped. Between 2:30 and 4:30 in the morning, they still hear church bells ringing from the basement, even though the nearest church is miles away. It was a Thanksgiving we will never forget, and one most people refuse to believe ever happened. Ever since, I have had these questions in my mind which I never knew whom to ask, like, the woman in the black dress was warning them or trying to take him? What was inside that basement closet? Was the ghost connected to the fire next door? Sometimes I just want to erase this memory from my mind and again try to enjoy Thanksgiving like before, but I think that's not possible anymore.